I'm Trish Simpson-Davis.
I'm Marion Reed.
My name is Godfrey Collier.
My name is Zoe Viney.
My name is Steve Baker.
My name's Sally Miller.
I'm Sue Bell.
I'm Sarah Lewin. I'm the Information and Archives Manager in Hampshire County Council's Archives and Local Studies Service.
I'm the Oral History Coordinator
And I'm the Secretary
for the Bishop's Waltham Area Oral History Group.
I'm a volunteer in this exhibition.
I'm a trustee of Hampshire Gardens Trust and I run our research group. So we are responsible for, among other things, maintaining the Hampshire Registry of Historic Parks and Gardens.
I'm from Skate Southampton, and my role within Skate Southampton is technically the chairperson, but our whole role as an organisation is basically to promote skateboarding and make exciting things happen.
And I am film curator at Wessex Film and Sound Archive, based at Hampshire Record Office in Winchester.
I live at Mitchell Devastation and have done for nearly 40 years. And I thought it was time to celebrate Mitchell Devastation's 180th birthday.
So the project involved archiving a whole host of 35mm negatives of skateboarding within the UK between the late 80s and the early 90s. This was so important basically because things like this can just get lost so easily, you know, and there's whole generations of skateboarding and skateboarders now who might not necessarily be exposed to what skateboarding was, you know, back when it kind of originated during the initial boom in the UK, let alone kind of understand certain places or, you know, people that may have skated or certain tricks that may have been done. So it's kind of a bit of a historian education aspect, but it's also a kind of really fun thing to do, you know, particularly for myself and some of the other members of Skate Southampton. Photography's always been such an integral part of skateboarding. So when I was kind of handed a whole bag of film negatives that were just been rolled up in their canisters after being developed, like, you know, sat in this bag for near on 30 years, it was kind of, you know, what is in here? And we've discovered there's not only kind of, you know, photos that have been printed in previous like skate magazines or zines within the UK. There's also photos that have never been seen, and photos of, you know, well-known UK skateboarders, some not so well-known UK skateboarders, but also, you know, international, well-renowned skateboarders that would have come round on tours and things. So it's yeah, it's really exciting and really interesting and really important.
Our project was to celebrate Mitchell Devastation's 180th anniversary. It was important because it is such an interesting station that has resulted in a settlement developing, and it is quite an unusual settlement. And we felt this was worth celebrating.
This exhibition tells the story of the Mayflower in Southampton in 1620. The Mayflower is an iconic ship as far as some Americans are concerned, but it is also an important part of the history of the city. The Mayflower came to Southampton in 1620 for its supplies and to be joined by another ship before they set sail for America. They were actually here for 3 weeks, and during that time quite a lot of important things happened that led to the success of the voyage. We decided that we would commemorate the sailing of the Mayflower by having an exhibition in the city, and the City Council gave us permission to use the Westgate Tower and to create inside it an exhibition that tells the story of the arrival, the events that happened while it was in the town, and the departure of the Mayflower for America.
The research was important for a couple of reasons, really. One was almost as a training exercise for my researchers to sit in archives and read 18th century documents and transcribe them. So it was a very good learning experience for them. It was important to update the record about Humphrey Repton's work in Hampshire, which really nobody had known much about. And also it was an opportunity, having done the research, to do some public talks.
We've forgotten that all around us there are people, our neighbours, our families, our friends, who can tell us stories about the past, and we've got to hang on to those and capture them before it's too late. I mean, already, I'm sorry to have to tell you, some of the early people who were interviewed for the Oral History Project in the Bishop's Waltham area have already gone where we can no longer interview them. But it's also important that we get younger people to understand that they've got stories to tell.
How old were you when the war started?
How old was I? Oh gosh, I think I was 7. So I was born at Upham. I went to Upham School.
Did you have any evacuees come to live?
About 2 years later, when I was about 9, I moved to live at East Meon briefly. And we did have evacuees then, and they came from Portsmouth. One of the things we had to do, we had to wear a gas mask, which was a peculiar, ugly-looking thing. You had to put it over your face, you had to breathe in, and then when you breathed out, the air would sort of escape along the side of this thing with a sort of bubbly noise. And every day we had to do practice at having a lesson with our gas masks on.
I heard about the Hampshire Archives Trust when we were trying to raise funds to create many of the exhibition displays, and I knew one of the members of the Archive Trust, and she suggested I made an application for a grant.
We've always had a relationship with them as the Gardens Trust, and certainly one of our trustees at least is a member, and probably several are members. So we've always known about Hampshire Archives Trust.
I have been aware of it for many years and taken advantage of activities and events that have been sponsored by the Hampshire Archives Trust.
Hampshire Record Office has had a long and fruitful partnership with Hampshire Archives Trust. We've known about the Trust for many years. And we are very keen to continue working with the Trust because it helps us. It helps support archives, it helps support our public service, it also helps community groups with their archives, and generally helps support and promote the value and use of archives in Hampshire and beyond.
We heard about the Hampshire Archive Trust after a conversation we had with A Space Arts, where I approached them and said we had an awful lot of kind of film and photography material from the late 80s and early 90s. We wanted to archive it, and they just kind of recommended we get in touch with you.
We needed a grant because we really needed a television. We had a video of part of the story of the Mayflower, which we wanted to have in the exhibition, and we also needed some leaflets, which we wanted to give visitors so they were better informed as they went round.
We used the grant, it was a contribution towards the cost of publishing the book. In 2017, it was the tricentenary of the death of Humphrey Repton, who was a landscape gardener who's successor to Lancelot Capability Brown. And he had 2 projects, 2 gardens that he built in Hampshire. So this was part of a research project to find out more about the work he had done in Hampshire. And the site that we chose to research was Herriard Park, which is near Alton, between Alton and Basingstoke. And as it happens, there's a huge archive, a huge family archive in Hampshire Record Office about his work there. Everything from long lists of orders for the garden to the nurseryman. And I and some colleagues spent most of the summer of 2017 transcribing that archive. And it was such a big source of material that we thought this would be really good to publish a book about this. There was enough material to do that.
We needed a grant to archive a whole bunch of 35mm negatives that we got given by a local skateboarder, Don Bryder, and we just basically wanted to turn those into a digital format so they were protected for the future, and then look to produce some form of magazines or zines in the future, and then look to exhibit some of these photos.
The grant paid for the hire of the hall, the speaker, and the printing of this magnificent little booklet, Parsons and Prawns.
We've received a number of grants, mainly to support the cataloguing work that we do here. We've got collections which we don't have time to list as part of the day-to-day business, so it's great to have additional support, financial support, to catalogue those collections and make them available. The Back to Nature one, we felt with all the sort of interest in climate change and the natural environment, it was really good to be able to showcase some of those collections and to try and encourage people to come into the record office to carry out research on those archives.
Oh, we got an enormous grant. We got £1,500.
We want to have the best equipment so that we can really make a good contribution from the history of our community.
We needed decent recorders, that we needed microphones, and then of course to run it properly we needed a laptop, and also things like paying for software, and most importantly paying for actually archiving what we recorded, so that what we put in was good quality and we could be pretty sure of keeping it safely before it gets to Hampshire Record Office.
Hampshire Archives Trust was generous enough to give us a grant to contribute to our Working in Shadows project. Working in Shadows was really different for us because we worked with creative venues across the south, and we had to sell tickets. We had to sell a lot of tickets. We had to sell hundreds and hundreds of tickets. So to be able to have the support of Hampshire Archives Trust in delivering the various elements of our project, including these lovely exhibition panels, one of them you see behind me, enabled us to go out into these venues with a full package of information. We could go out, we could introduce the films, we could have the exhibition panels to talk about the films and the history of Elliot's, but we could also screen the films in those contexts too. And this meant our audience numbers were much, much higher than normal. Thanks to funding from Hampshire Archives Trust, we were able to have the films digitised as part of the project. The films were digitised, and we organised a series of screenings of the film material and hosted them across the county. Alongside our screening series, we were also able to interview a number of women who believed to have worked at Elliot's during the war. One particular woman, Vera, was able to recount her memories of working at Elliot's, and it's her voice that you hear over the film footage of Elliot's.
We got a grant of £500, which basically covered the cost of employing a professional photographer to scan and digitise all of the negatives.
We're just a small group, and we don't need vast amounts of money, so there was a small grant that was just perfect for our needs.
Applying for the grant, it seemed very easy. We contacted Hampshire Archives Trust to inquire about grants, and I know they have different levels of grants for projects, and filled in the application form, and they came back and said, I think we had asked for £4,000 towards the publication cost, but they gave us £3,000, which was absolutely terrific. Yeah.
We've also had grants from the Trust for purchasing archives that have come up for sale at auction to help support that process. And with those, you need to act really quickly. And I have to say, we got a very quick, very helpful response from Hampshire Archives Trust, which was really helpful to us, and it enabled us to buy 2 collections or 2 archives in the last couple of years.
It was all agreed within something like 2 or 3 weeks.
I had a conversation with your secretary, and then I prepared up a very simple document that said what our aims and purpose were and the amount we needed and what we wanted it for.
I didn't realise quite how easy it would be working with them on a small project like ours up here in the sticks.
The process of applying for a grant with the Hampshire Archives Trust was super straightforward. I believe we completed an application form online, submitted that, then had a meeting with the trustees online just to elaborate more on what our plans and ambitions were. We then received the money, got stuck into what we were doing, and then we've had a few follow-ups just to see how things have gone and how things are going, and even to check in with ideas and things we might have for other projects we want to do. So yeah, really great. Yeah, I think we'll definitely be applying for more.
Hampshire Archives Trust is a fantastic supportive organisation. They support the work of archives, and they help us develop activities and accessible events to get archives in front of more people and create further engagements going forwards.
I've been very impressed. We've made sure that visitors know about the Hampshire Archives Trust, because without the Trust we would not have been able to have achieved everything we wanted. So I've been very, very impressed, and I know that on our next project we will in all probability be making an application for a grant.
The Hampshire Archives Trust is an incredible organisation. It has been so helpful to us.
I think the Hampshire Archives Trust is great. I think, archiving things to share information and keep it safe, for generations to come is so important, because it doesn't take long before things get lost. and people get out of touch. You know, you think about the war, for example. I recall speaking to my nan. In the war, Second World War doesn't seem like a real thing to me, even though I've learnt about it and been told about it forever. But then speaking to my nan, it feels real. But then as soon as they're no longer here, you know, thinking about my daughters or other kids, it's, that disconnection is gone. So if you've got proof, you know, and have archives to share, and if that can be translated into formats that people can, you know, in the modern age or time translate and or relate to, then yeah, it's super important.